There is something you've been doing every single day that's keeping you from everything you say you want. It's not what you think. It's not laziness or lack of action or bad luck or wrong timing. It's something far more subtle, far more invisible, and infinitely more powerful. It's the thing no one talks about in the manifestation conversations you've been consuming. It's the thing that lives underneath every failed attempt, every repeated pattern, every year that passes, and you're still waiting for your life to transform. You've been holding too tight. Feel that for a moment. Just let those words settle into the quiet spaces inside you. You've been holding too tight. Most of what you've learned about creating your reality has taught you to grasp, to visualize harder, to affirm with more intensity, to push toward your desires with determination and willpower and unwavering focus. And yes, there is something to that. There is power in clarity and intention, and the refusal to accept less than what you know is possible for you. But what if I told you that everything you want is actually waiting on the other side of release? What if the very thing that's been promised to you, the love, the abundance, the sense of purpose, the transformation, what if it can only come to you when you finally stop strangling it with the grip of your fear and desperation? This is the paradox that changes everything. This is the truth that operates beneath all of reality, and once you understand it, once you really feel it in your bones, you'll never approach your desires the same way again. The tighter you hold, the faster it slips away. The more desperately you cling to the outcome, the more you push it further into a future that never quite arrives. But when you loosen your grip, when you release the stranglehold of your need, something shifts. The very thing you were grasping for comes gliding toward you like it was always meant to find you. You know this truth already, somewhere deep inside. You've experienced it in small ways. You felt it in relationships when you finally stopped trying to convince someone to love you and suddenly they could see you again. You felt it with money when you stopped obsessing over every penny and your abundance suddenly shifted. You felt it with opportunities when you stopped desperately needing them to work out, and they somehow did. You felt it with your own peace when you finally surrendered to what was happening instead of fighting against it with all your might. The universe has been showing you this lesson over and over again. It's time to truly learn it. But here's where it gets complicated, because understanding this intellectually is completely different from embodying it. You can read these words and nod your head and think, yes, yes, I understand. I need to let go. And then you go back to your life, and within hours, you're right back to grasping, right back to the desperate energy, right back to the tightness in your chest that comes from needing something so badly that you can barely breathe. The mind agrees with the philosophy, but the nervous system hasn't received the message. Your body is still in survival mode. Your being is still contracted around the fear that if you release your grip, if you stop controlling and managing and obsessing, then everything will fall apart. Everything will slip away. You'll be left with nothing. And that's the real place we need to go together. That's where the transformation actually lives. Because this is about more than just a technique or a mindset shift. This is about fundamentally changing your relationship with reality itself. This is about healing the part of you that learned a long time ago that you had to control everything to be safe, that you had to earn everything through struggle, that you had to hold on as tightly as possible or you'd lose everything. That's where the real work is. Think back to when you first learned this lesson. There was a moment, maybe many moments, where you experienced loss. Maybe you held something precious and it was taken from you anyway. Maybe you tried with all your might and it still wasn't enough. Maybe you loved someone and they left. Maybe you built something and it crumbled. And in that moment of devastation, you made a decision. You decided that from that moment forward, you would never be that vulnerable again. You would never be that unguarded. You would never let yourself believe in something that could be taken away. You would grip tighter. You would control more. You would never again risk the kind of pain that comes from release and loss. And that decision made sense. It was wise in that moment. It was protective. It was survival. But now that survival mechanism has become your prison. Now that protection mechanism is the very thing keeping you from what you want. Because what you desire, true love, real abundance, genuine fulfillment, none of it can exist in a state of fear and control. Those higher experiences can only arise when you're willing to release the desperate energy, to surrender the outcome, to trust in something larger than your need. This is what people mean when they talk about faith. It's not blind faith. It's not wishful thinking. It's not pretending that the world is something other than what it is. True faith is the willingness to release your death grip on the outcome because you trust that the universe is fundamentally benevolent. You trust that the laws of attraction and manifestation are real and working, and that when you align your consciousness with what you want to experience, it must come to you, not because you're forcing it, not because you're controlling it, but because you're in alignment with it. You're a vibrational match for it. You're assuming that you already are the person who has it, the person who experiences, the person who experiences it, the person who lives in that reality. But here's what blocks that assumption. It's the tightness. It's the fear. It's the part of you that doesn't really believe you deserve it, doesn't really believe it's possible, doesn't really believe you can be safe if you let go. So you keep holding on. You keep controlling. You keep trying to force reality to bend to your will through sheer force of intention and willpower. And it doesn't work the way you want it to because you're operating from a frequency of lack, not abundance. You're operating from desperation, not certainty. You're operating from fear, not faith. The transformation begins when you understand something fundamental about how reality actually works. Your outer world is not separate from you. It's not something happening to you that you have to manage and control and force into submission. Your outer world is a reflection, a manifestation, a materialization of your inner state of being. It's showing you constantly what you believe about yourself and the universe. It's showing you your assumptions about what's possible. It's showing you where you're contracted and where you're open. It's showing you where you're holding tight and where you're released. When you look at your life right now, really look at it, you're seeing your consciousness made visible. You're seeing your assumptions about yourself made manifest. You're seeing the beliefs you carry about what you deserve, what's possible for you, whether you're safe, whether the universe is friendly or hostile, whether you can trust in the unfolding of your life, or whether you have to control every single aspect of it. Your life is not happening to you. Your life is happening through you. It's the materialization of your inner world. So when you're desperately trying to manifest something while holding tight to the fear that it won't work, the universe responds to that frequency. The universe responds to the desperation and the doubt and the fear. And what it reflects back to you is more scarcity, more struggle, more delay. The desired outcome gets further and further away, not because it's not real, not because you're not worthy, not because the universe is denying you. It's getting further away because your frequency doesn't match it. Your inner state contradicts your outer desire. You're asking for abundance while radiating the vibration of lack. You're asking for love while emitting the frequency of unworthiness. You're asking for trust while gripping tight to fear. The way out of this is not through more effort. It's not through stronger affirmations, or more intense visualizations, or more hours spent manifesting. It's through release. It's through the willing surrender of your desperate need for a specific outcome. It's through the relaxation of the grip. And this is crucial. This isn't about not wanting anymore. This isn't about becoming indifferent to your desires. This is about shifting from a state of need to a state of knowing, from a state of desperately chasing to a state of already being. Imagine for a moment that what you want has already happened, not in some distant future, not in some nebulous tomorrow that never quite arrives, but right now, in this present moment. Imagine it's already done. Imagine it's already real. What would change in your inner world? How would your nervous system feel? What would you release? What would you stop thinking about? What would you stop worrying about? What stories would you no longer need to tell yourself? When you imagine that your desire is already fulfilled, when you assume that identity, when you step into that feeling, you immediately notice how much of the desperation dissolves. You notice how much of the fear releases. You notice how the tightness in your body begins to soften. And that shift in your inner state is everything. That's the actual manifestation. The outer form will follow. The physical reality will catch up. The person, the opportunity, the money, the circumstance will appear in your life because your frequency has shifted. You've changed what you're radiating to the universe. You've changed your assumptions about yourself and what's possible. You've stepped out of the identity of someone who's desperately trying to get something and into the identity of someone who already has it. And the universe, which is infinitely responsive to your being, will rearrange itself to match that new identity. But here's where most people get stuck. When they try to assume the feeling of already having what they want, they do it from a place of still trying to control the outcome. They're still holding tight, still managing, still desperate. They're essentially trying to fake their way into a different frequency while still carrying all the fear and doubt underneath. And it doesn't work because the universe responds to your true frequency, not to the surface affirmation. The universe responds to what you really believe, what you really assume about yourself, what you're really radiating from your core being. So the real work is in the release. The real work is in healing the part of you that's terrified, that if you let go, you'll lose everything. The real work is in gradually, gently, compassionately learning to trust again. Learning to trust that you're safe, even when you can't control every outcome. Learning to trust that the universe is fundamentally supportive of your evolution and expansion. Learning to trust that you can relax and still receive. Learning to trust that the greatest things in life come not through force and desperation, but through alignment and surrender. This kind of trust doesn't come from more information or more convincing. It comes from felt experience. It comes from evidence in your own body. It comes from starting small. Choose something you don't desperately need. Choose something that would be nice but not devastating if it didn't happen. And practice releasing it. Practice assuming you already have it. Practice relaxing your nervous system around it. Notice what shifts. Notice what appears. Start building evidence for yourself that this actually works. Because once your nervous system has felt the reality of this principle, once you've seen it working in your own life, then it becomes easier to apply it to the things you want most. As you practice this release, you'll start to notice something profound shifting in your experience. The tightness will begin to soften. The desperation will start to ease. You'll feel more space inside yourself. You'll notice moments where you're not thinking about what you want. And in those moments of ease and presence, something miraculous happens. That's when synchronicity arrives. That's when the unexpected opportunity appears. That's when the person texts you out of nowhere. That's when the money shows up from a source you weren't expecting. That's when the right next step becomes crystal clear. These things don't come through desperation. They come through presence. They come through alignment. They come through the spaces you create when you finally stop holding so tight. And I want to be very clear about something because this is where so many people misunderstand. Releasing the grip doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It doesn't mean sitting on your couch doing nothing while waiting for the universe to deliver. It means taking inspired action from a place of knowing rather than desperation. It means moving toward what you want from a frequency of alignment rather than a frequency of chase. It means doing what feels right in each moment, without obsessing over whether it's the right move or whether it's moving you fast enough toward your goal. It means trusting your intuition more than your fear. It means following the breadcrumbs of synchronicity and opportunity that appear when you're in alignment, rather than trying to force a single predetermined path. The inspired action is actually easier than the desperate action, because it comes from a place of trust and certainty rather than fear and doubt. When you are acting from desperation, every action feels heavy. Every step feels labored. You're always second guessing yourself, always wondering if it's enough, always carrying the anxiety that it might not work out. But when you're acting from alignment, when you're moving towards something you've already assumed is yours, the action feels light. It feels natural. It feels like you're simply allowing what was already meant to be to flow through you into physical form. This is the secret that changes everything about how you move through the world. Your outer world is not separate from your inner world. They're not two different things competing for dominance. Your outer reality is literally the extension of your inner state. So, when you're holding tight, when you're contracted in fear, when you're radiating desperation, the universe has no choice but to match that frequency. It has no choice but to show you more scarcity, more struggle, more delay. But when you soften, when you release, when you trust, when you assume that you already are what you want to be, the universe rearranges itself. The people who need to appear, appear. The opportunities that are meant for you find you. The circumstances that support your expansion align with you. Not because you forced it, but because you're no longer blocking it with your fear and desperation. Think about love for a moment. If you've ever truly been in love, or if you've ever truly been loved, think about how it felt. It didn't feel like desperation, did it? It didn't feel like you had to perform, or prove your worth, or convince the other person that you were worthy of their affection. When you were truly loved, you felt it as a given. You felt it as something the other person could not help but feel. You felt it as inevitable. And here's the thing. The people who feel most loved are usually not the ones who are desperately trying to convince their partner to love them. They're the ones who are so secure here in their own worth that they don't need the love to prove anything. They're the ones who are relaxed enough in their own being that they can simply receive the love that's flowing toward them. And this is exactly how it works with every single thing you want to manifest. The job, the money, the opportunity, the purpose, the peace. It all comes to you most easily when you're not desperately grasping for it, when you've released the death grip, when you've softened your nervous system, when you've genuinely assumed that you already are the person who has it, or experiences it, or lives in that reality. The desperation pushes it away. The releasing draws it toward you. So where do you begin? How do you actually practice this in a real, tangible way in your everyday life? The first thing is awareness. Start noticing where you're holding tight. Notice the areas of your life where there's tightness and contraction. Notice where you're desperately trying to control outcomes. Notice where you're obsessing over what might go wrong. Notice where you're afraid to relax, because you believe something bad will happen if you do. Just notice. Bring compassion to it. This is not a failure on your part. This is survival programming that once protected you. Thank it for serving you. Thank that protective mechanism for keeping you safe. And then gently, very gently, ask if it's still needed right now. Then begin the practice of deliberately releasing specific things. Take something you want. Close your eyes and imagine having it. Feel the feeling of already possessing it. Let your nervous system come into alignment with that feeling. And then consciously, deliberately, release your grip on it. Say something to yourself like, I release my need to control this, or I trust this is already mine, or I relax and allow this to come to me. Do this not once, but again and again, until it becomes a practice, a habit, a new way of relating to your desires. You're literally retraining your nervous system. You're teaching your body that you can be safe and open at the same time. You're demonstrating to yourself that the universe is trustworthy. And as you practice this release, notice what happens inside you. Notice the softening. Notice the space that opens up. Notice how, when you're not obsessing about something, you often get insights about what you actually want or how to approach it differently. Notice how opportunities appear in the spaces where you've released your desperate grip. Notice how synchronicity increases when you're not so tightly controlling everything. These are signs that you're coming into alignment. These are signs that your frequency is shifting. These are signs that you're learning to trust. There's a beautiful paradox at the heart of all of this. The more you release your desperate need to control outcomes, the more you come into real power. The more you trust the universe, the more aligned you become with its intelligence and support. The more you surrender your tight grip, the more you actually receive. This is not weakness. This is the ultimate strength. This is stepping out of the exhausting, desperate position of trying to force reality to bend to your will and stepping into the position of alignment with the natural intelligence that's orchestrating everything in the first place. What if the greatest gifts in your life have been waiting for you to soften enough to receive it? What if the love that's meant for you has been trying to find you but couldn't get through because you were so defended against the possibility of being hurt? What if the abundance that belongs to you has been trying to flow to you but couldn't break through the barrier of your desperate need and scarcity consciousness? What if the purpose and meaning and peace that you're searching for have been waiting for you to quiet down enough internally to hear them calling? The moment you begin to release, the moment you soften your nervous system, the moment you stop strangling your desires with fear and desperation, that's the moment everything begins to shift. Not immediately in the external world, perhaps, but immediately in your inner experience. You'll feel lighter, you'll feel more spacious, you'll feel more like yourself. And that shift in your inner experience is the precursor to everything shifting in your outer world. Because your inner world is primary. Your consciousness is the cause. Your life circumstances are the effect. They always follow. They always must follow, because they're extensions of your inner being made visible and tangible and real. So the real question isn't, how do I get what I want? The real question is, how do I become the person who has what I want? Because once you're truly in that identity, once you've assumed it at the deepest level, once your nervous system has settled into knowing rather than seeking, the manifestation is automatic. It's inevitable. The outer world has no choice but to reflect what you've already claimed internally. And here's what's beautiful about this. As you practice release, as you soften, as you come into deeper trust, you'll notice that you also become happier now. Not in some future when you finally get what you want, but right now, in this moment, in your current circumstances. Because so much of your suffering has been coming from the desperate need for things to be different. So much of your pain has been coming from the tight grip, the resistance, the refusal to be at peace until circumstances change. But what if you could be at peace now? What if you could feel complete now? What if you could love your life now, even as you're also in the process of deliberately creating the next version of it? That's the freedom that comes through release. That's the joy that comes through surrender. This doesn't mean you don't want better. It doesn't mean you don't have desires and dreams and visions for your life. It means you can hold those visions while simultaneously being at peace with what is. You can be reaching toward expansion while being grateful for right now. You can be moving toward your dreams while not needing them to validate your worth or prove you're deserving. You can be creating your future while actually living your present. And as you master this balance, as you learn to hold your desires lightly while moving toward them with trust and inspired action, your entire experience of life transforms. The desperation dissolves, the constant anxiety softens, the urgency releases. And in that space of peace and trust, miracles become normal, synchronicity becomes frequent. Your life begins to unfold with a kind of grace and ease that you might have thought was impossible before. The thing you've been holding too tight is the very thing you can finally receive once you let go. The love you've been desperately grasping for will come to you when you're finally at peace enough to recognize and receive it. The abundance you've been anxiously chasing will flow to you when you've relaxed into trust. The purpose and meaning you've been searching for will reveal itself when you've quieted down enough internally to hear it. The peace you've been seeking will descend upon you when you've finally surrendered the fight. So as you move through your day, as you go about your life, I invite you to practice this awareness. Notice where you're holding tight. Bring compassion to it. Thank it for serving you. And then gently, deliberately, consciously release your grip. Feel the sensation of softening. Feel the space opening up inside you. Feel the peace that comes with surrender. Feel the safety that comes with trust. And watch with wonder and gratitude as your life begins to respond to this new frequency. Watch as synchronicity increases. Watch as the right people, opportunities, and circumstances begin to appear. Watch as what you've been desperately trying to manifest begins to arrive with ease and grace. This is not something that happens overnight. This is not a one-time shift. This is a practice. This is a return, again and again, to the willingness to release. It's a returning, again and again, to the willingness to trust. It's a gentle, persistent unwinding of the old patterns of control and desperation and fear. But every single time you practice it, you strengthen the new neural pathways. Every single time you release and notice what happens, you build more evidence that this actually works. Every single time you soften and feel the relief, your nervous system learns that you can be safe and open at the same time. So be patient with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You've been holding tight for a reason. That contraction has been protecting you. It makes sense. But it's no longer serving you. It's no longer necessary. And as you gradually, compassionately, persistently practice release, you'll feel the old patterns loosening. You'll feel the walls softening. You'll feel the desperate grip relaxing. And in that space of release, in that space of openness and trust and surrender, everything you've been wanting will finally be able to reach you. The universe is not withholding from you. Reality is not resisting your desires. Life is not against you. The only thing standing between you and everything you want is your willingness to believe that you deserve it, to trust that it's coming, and to release your desperate grip on how and when and where it arrives. The moment you do that, the moment you truly let go, everything changes. Everything shifts. You come into alignment with what you've been seeking all along. And it comes to you not because you forced it, but because you finally allowed it. Because you finally became open enough to receive it. Because you finally learned to hold your desires loosely while moving toward them with trust. Rest now in this knowing. Rest in this understanding. Let your nervous system settle into the truth that you are safe enough to release. You are worthy enough to receive without desperate grasping. You are enough exactly as you are right now in this moment. And as you relax into that truth, as you allow that understanding to permeate your being, watch as your entire world begins to transform. Not because you're forcing it, but because you finally learned to let go. You finally learned to trust. You finally learned to assume that what you want is not something you have to chase, but something you can simply allow to come to you in its own time, in its own way, through the natural intelligence of a universe that's always been on your side.